Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Name on the Trophy, the Manchester United podcast and YouTube show hosted by me, Dominic Booth. I'm featuring I'm going to call you regular now, Alex Wiley from Sabre Sports. How are you this week, Alex?
Yeah, I'm good. A little frustrated after the game yesterday, but otherwise pretty good.
Yeah, we're recording this the day after United's 2-2 draw with Leeds at Old Trafford, which we were both present at. But we're going to continue our evergreen feel to these episodes rather than react to that, because there's probably hundreds of podcasts that you can listen to that are reacting to the Leeds game. We're going to talk about some exciting youngsters at Manchester United today, and particularly those who are currently out on loan. And it's an interesting list. We'll get into the bones of this very, very soon. But just a note at the start of the podcast this week, just to ask you all to rate and to subscribe on wherever you listen to your podcasts. Alex, I found out that, the other day that our standard listener was a UK male between the ages of 28 and 34. I don't know how surprising that is to you.
I think it's quite surprising given that we're both 21.
Yeah, I mean, we can try and keep that act up if we want, but
No, it's not very surprising at all, to be honest.
What's quite nice is we do have listeners as far afield as Vietnam, Thailand, South Africa, Ghana, Jamaica. So wherever you're tuning in from, it's very much appreciated, and continue to listen, and maybe special interest in this episode because there's a number of exciting youngsters from all the way around the world really who are at United who we think maybe could make some waves. And the first one I want to talk about, Alex, is Ahmad Diallo. Ahmad, or Diallo, however you want to call him. Ahmad was always the way that I was told to call him in my previous job. But what's happening with Ahmad? First of all, can you tell us, because he's doing some serious things at Sunderland at the moment?
Yeah, well, when United signed him, I thought he was one of the better young players for his position. I can't remember how old he was at the time, 17, 18. But
Yeah,
certainly
18.
his stats in the Primavera, and I mentioned this on a previous episode, his stats in the Primavera were like Messi level for that level. It was amazing. And then he looked decent in our academy. He scored some nice goals. Then he went out on loan to Rangers, and it didn't go very well. He barely played. And now, as you said before, he's gone to Sunderland and he looks absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it was probably not the right move that Rangers won at the time. I think kind of because of the situation that the Rangers were in. You know, they're fighting for a league title. They're a really, really big club, and Scottish football, I know a lot of people criticise it for the quality, but I think Ahmad was really in the thick of things there. Not saying that he isn't now, but he just seems better adapted and maybe better for that Rangers experience at Sunderland in the Championship. And he's gone from being one of the fringe players at Sunderland at the start of the season and think substitute appearances here and there to basically one of their most important attacking players, Alex.
Yeah, at Rangers, he didn't play enough. And I always feel for players if they don't actually get the chance to show how good they are. And I was worried that it was going to happen at Sunderland as well with that initial dry period. But yeah, as soon as he started playing, he's been absolutely superb. He got Championship Player of the Month last month. His Sabre score, which I don't think it needs to be explained. I explained it last episode, so I'm not going to explain it again.
You can go back to that episode and find that
Yeah,
find that explanation.
periodically I'll explain what it is, but I'll leave it for now. Sabre score is 78, which is around average for the Premier League. He's 20 years old and he has a potential of 84. And 84 is like a starting player for one of the top sides in the Premier League. So it's really, really promising.
Yeah, and we talked about this a bit last time when we were talking about Jadon Sancho and Anthony, but that position that is Ahmad's most comfortable, which is on the right hand side, cutting in on his left foot. I know he's played, I think, as a number 10 and even up front as a false 9 for Sunderland as well. But that position where you think about him cutting in, he's got a whole heap of pace, really, really good close control and good decision making in those areas as well. You just think that that's got to be appealing to Ten Hag when the summer comes around and he's thinking about maybe he needs 6 forwards for those 3 positions, two in each position. Ahmad behind Anthony on that right hand side, particularly now that we're seeing Jadon Sancho coming back against Leeds and playing off the left, and Marcus Rashford there as well. It leaves that position potentially open for Ahmad.
Yeah, 100%. His performances at Sunderland are worth taking seriously. Whether that be getting another loan to a Premier League club or being the deputy to Anthony, I'm not sure what the right thing to do is for United. But yeah, his performances for Sunderland suggest that he could be a player good enough for United, and that's really promising. You spoke about his good decision making, his pass completion, which is a fairly useful metric for getting an idea of that. Like Jadon Sancho, for example, has very good pass completion and tends to be quite a good decision maker. His pass completion puts him in the top 10% for players in that position in a similar league to the Championship. So you're spot on about that. His goal scoring has been superb. I think he's scoring 1 every 2.5 games, which is
he's got seven
really,
goals.
really, really good. My only concern is his expected goals, which again, I'm not going to give a primer for because I think the listeners will all know what it is. His expected goals is about half what his goals currently is. And his expected goals is more or less average. So either he's a better finisher than the average winger, or he's been a little lucky. It might be both, to be honest. But regardless, even if we're looking at the overall picture, we're talking about a winger who could play an elite club, and that's exciting.
Yeah, and we're talking about a position in which United obviously have strengthened a lot over the past few years. We've spoken about that before. Anthony, Jadon Sancho. They didn't spend, Ahmad himself wasn't exactly cheap. I think there's a lot of performance-related add-ons in that deal, which could take it up towards the £40 million mark. So you would be expecting him to play a role in the first team for that kind of money. It's not the kind of player from the academy who, well, if he makes it, it's a bit of a bonus, but otherwise, on you go. United are going to invest a bit of time in him, I think, and that's maybe why I don't think that they will send him out on a Premier League loan next season. I think they learnt their lesson with James Garner. I think they should have brought James Garner back from Nottingham Forest after his first loan to give him a bit of a chance in the midfield. They didn't do that, and then they sort of missed their window to let him have a chance in the first team there. And I know it's United and they need the highest quality at every single position, but Ahmad isn't a joke. He's a serious player.
Yeah, he is a serious player, and whether he gets that Premier League loan or not, I think it's really difficult. Like, it's a question of game time, because let's be honest, if he goes out on loan, he probably will play more than if he's at United. But then the flip side of that is if he's at United, he'll be training with the first team. He'll understand the system that Ten Hag wants to play. He probably will get a little bit of game time. And it's just finding that right balance because, yes, they've invested in Ahmad, but the question really is what gets you the better return on the investment? Is it being part of the United team as of the start of next season, or is it another loan? I actually don't know the answer to that, but it's something United need to take quite seriously because we are quite limited on the right hand side. We have one left-footed winger, and that's Anthony.
Yeah, we've seen Facundo Pellistri play a little bit on that right hand side, and I suppose Anthony Elanga as well maybe falls into that potential category. But both of those two are part of the squad at the moment and aren't getting a huge amount of minutes. So whether United make a ruthless decision in shipping one or both of those two off and letting Ahmad come in and maybe pushing Anthony a bit harder than other players, I think that's probably the way that I think they should go personally.
Yeah, his left-footedness puts him ahead, I think, of Pellistri and Anthony Elanga, because I think Ten Hag really likes his wingers cutting in. you can tell like the way that he sets the teams up, he really likes them cutting in, and then either the fullbacks coming round or the fullbacks coming in if the wingers happen to push a little bit wide. Ahmad being left-footed is very beneficial for him in terms of game time at United. And this is my problem with Pellistri and with Elanga. Whether they're good enough for United almost isn't part of the question, because like on the left-hand side, there's already Rashford, there's already Sancho, there's already Garnacho, who, let's be honest, all three of them are better than those two. I just don't see how they're ever going to fit in. And I know Ten Hag has put Elanga as a striker, and I said on a previous podcast, I don't see any facet to Elanga's game that suggests he is a striker. So I think the right thing to do is be ruthless. I think they should be sold. And I, to be honest, think they should have loaned Elanga out to Dortmund during January. It would have made a lot of sense. Either he takes his game to the next level, and then you have, okay, we've got a serious question as to whether he can actually be part of the team, or you can sell him on. To,
I think
like,
it's a needs must thing with him playing up front, and maybe it's a needs must with him being kept in the squad because United just simply don't have that many options in the number 9 position.
Yeah, but I guess now we've got Weghorst there. Weghorst and Weghorst and Anthony Martial. Two strikers.
So many Anthonys.
Yeah, there are. Two strikers for one striker position. It's a bit threadbare, but it's not the end of the world. If I was in a position to make that decision, Elanga's out on loan at Dortmund right now.
Yeah, and certainly United will be focusing on the number 9 position for their main attacking transfer in the summer. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So therefore, it leaves other positions for people to come through and make their own. One player that we potentially might not see in a Manchester United shirt anytime soon, but who is quite an intriguing one, really, given his background and what he's doing out on loan at the moment, is another left-footed player, Alex, in Alvaro Fernandez. Some people probably won't know a huge amount about Alvaro Fernandez. Fernandez with a Z, by the way, for those listeners. Came through at Real Madrid, signed by United at a really young age, I think 16, 17, and is now basically a regular part of the Preston side, slap bang in the middle of the Championship, and is holding his own week in, week out. What do you make of Alvaro Fernandez?
Quite unique, I think. He's quite tall for a left back. I'd almost go as far to say that he's a little clumsy. It's almost like he's not quite used to his limbs yet. His Sabre score at the moment is 70, which isn't bad. I mean, he's 19 years old. His potential's 78, which puts him around average Premier League level at the moment. It's promising. I don't think he'll ever be good enough for United, but he will definitely have a good career, probably at a top 5 European League club. He's very attacking. He's in the top 20% for expected goals, shots, and penalty area, touches in the penalty area. He loves getting forward. He's almost a wing back, really. Yeah. So he's more attacking than like Malacia, for example. My main concern with him is his ability in possession. So he's in the bottom 20% for the amount of passes he plays, and also in the bottom 20% for pass completion. I think it's like 65% is how often he completes a pass, which isn't great for a fullback. So yeah, he's interesting. I just don't see his future at United, especially with Luke Shaw and Malacia there. I don't quite see him ever being in a reg shirt consistently.
No. As with Ahmad, I saw a fair bit of Fernandez a couple of years ago when I used to watch the under-23s quite regularly, as it was called then, and he did stand out. I did think he was obviously tall for his age. He was just impactful in games. He would play on the left wing sometimes, or he'd play as a left back or as a wing back. And I think he stepped into central midfield at times as well. 4 assists this year for Preston, who I think play with a back 5 quite a lot. So I think he plays as a wing back a fair amount of the time. And he's obviously fairly trusted to play. So Yeah, like you say, maybe one that we keep an eye on in the years to come, and he pops up somewhere in the Premier League or higher echelons of the Championship, and we will see. It certainly seems like United might make a bit of money out of him, having signed him for diddly squat as a 17-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. Most players coming through the academy are not going to play for United. That's just the horrible truth of it. If he manages to get a career at like a I don't know, in the Bundesliga or La Liga, probably La Liga given he's Spanish. If he manages to like forge a career like that, that's good. Like that's a win for the academy. And if it makes a little bit of money and it makes more money than it's cost to develop him, that's a win. You can't expect every player to make it at United. The fact that Diallo is we're talking about him potentially doing that is a like really, really good. That's not to be expected.
Yeah, he's probably the exception on this list. Although another player who has featured for the United first team and who fans have sort of intermittently been fairly excited about is another fullback. We're going to talk about Alex, Ethan Laird. Now, always very, very highly rated, I will say, about Ethan Laird. People in the United Academy, coaches and people that I used to speak to used to really, really rate Ethan Laird, talk about him in really sort of glowing terms. And he's had 3 loans now to the Championship, Swansea, Bournemouth, and now QPR, in which he's pretty much excelled, apart from a spell at Bournemouth at the back end of last season where he didn't quite get into the side. The rest of the time, he's looked really at home and is consistently voted in teams of the week, teams of the month, and the fans of the clubs that he's played for really, really rate him.
Yeah, this is one of the ones where the data on my end doesn't quite match up with the player that I'm watching. And I think I know why, which I'll discuss. But when you watch Ethan Laird, he's very quick. He likes to dribble. 1v1 with and without the ball is exceptional. Certainly for on a championship level, tends to win most of those duels. That being said, his Sabre score is only 64 with a potential of 70, which may go some way to explaining why he's never got that loan move to the Premier League despite being so highly regarded. And you're probably thinking, well, why is that? If he's great 1v1, he's quick, he's got all these assets. The thing he has, it's a bad combination of a low amount of passes, bad pass completion, and little ball progression when he does pass it. Those are red flags for my model. I can tell you under the hood. If you got a fullback that struggles, it's all right. They had bad pass completion if they're progressing the ball, and vice versa. If they're bad at all of it's a red flag, and that might be worth considering when talking about Ethan Laird and deciding as to whether he's good enough for the Premier League and United.
Yeah, well, I think he did suffer, I think, in terms of his development with a couple of bad injuries when he was in the youth sides, and he didn't actually play that as much youth football as he probably should have done at the age 17, 18, and then went out on loan. I wonder if he's just sort of become a championship footballer, whether he's adapted his game or he's just done his developing in the championship. So therefore that breeds a certain type of player. Maybe that's a little bit harsh on that league in general, but I
Yeah,
have seen a lot of championship football. Some of it's not very pretty.
yeah, it's getting prettier. I think the standard is improving in the championship, but that jump from the championship to the Premier League, it might seem like a small one, but it's quite a significant jump to make. Playing relatively consistently in the championship at 20 years old is good. Like beyond the stats, beyond what you think watching him, that is impressive in and of itself. It wouldn't surprise me if he's part of a side that gets promoted to the Premier League in a few years after he's left United. I could see that happening for him. But as I said before with Alvaro, that's not bad. You know, consistently playing in the Championship and maybe even playing in the Premier League is good. Like United should be happy with that.
Yeah. Another win really for the academy, especially again if they sell him on for a few million. I'm sure there'll be some Championship sides who are calling in the summer on a permanent deal. That's for sure. As they might for the next player on my list, who again maybe a slight enigma, someone who again was raved about by a lot of people, maybe more the social media crowd for this guy, Hannibal Mejbri. Alex, very distinct figure with his sideshow bob haircut. He's very sort of combative and sometimes very rash with his style of play. He likes to get involved in challenges, and certainly never short of a word to say to the officials whenever I've seen him play at either youth level or the championship. I think he's got 9 bookings actually in 27 games this season on loan at Birmingham. What do you make of Hannibal? He's a fun player, I think.
He's fun. I was umming and ahhing as to whether to call him Sideshow Bob as well. So I'm glad that you've
got it out of the way.
Gone and taken the plunge. He's unique. He's disruptive. He's very good at disrupting play. He gets about. He's quite chaotic. He is very good at carrying the ball. So he's got that profile in which he can get the ball and he can carry it up the pitch. His creative numbers in terms of assists and expected assists are both very good. They're in the top 10% for centre midfielders. So he assists a goal once every 3 games roughly, and he's expected to assist once every 5, which might not sound fantastic, but for a centre midfielder, that's really, really good. His thing that I'm not too keen on is his pass completion. He keeps the ball 64% of the time with his passes, which for a centre midfielder is horrific. Like losing the ball like nearly half the time as a centre midfielder is absolutely ludicrous. And I think part of it is because he tends to actually play quite a lot of crosses. Like he actually comes out wide and crosses the ball quite a lot for a centre mid. But even so, I mean, 64% for a centre mid is real bad. It's
like
really
me
bad.
in 5-a-side, that.
Yeah, it's like our pass completion in 5-a-side. It's not very good. It's almost like he needs to just sort of slightly tone it down a little bit and get a little bit more control to his game, because you don't see centre midfielders lose the ball that often in a top 5 European league. You just don't. And no. if he can harness that sort of mad chaotic energy off the ball whilst having a bit more control on the ball, I think that would be a better balance for him. But right now, yeah, I'm not convinced.
No, I think fans of Birmingham are quite happy with him because of his style and maybe how much he buys into playing in that league. And it's an interesting one that United saw fit to send him to the Championship and rough and tumble and all that jazz. He's 20 years old. I think still time on his side. He has played a couple of times for the United first team last year. That memorable cameo at Anfield, Alex, where he came on, almost got himself sent off. Gary Neville said he was the best player in a United shirt or something because he was willing to take a booking or something like that.
Because he showed a bit of effort, wasn't it?
Passion merchant.
Yeah, but that game, like that was almost like a nutshell of what he is. He's just chaos. He's pure chaos.
Well, like chaos could continue at United because I think he's contracted until 2024 with an extra year's option. So I don't actually see United pulling the plug yet on Hannibal Mejbri. I think they do see something in him, and I think they paid £5 million for him a couple of years ago from Monaco. So clearly got something, and clearly has the belief that he'll make it. His own belief in himself. I think that's very, very clear.
Yeah.
Elsewhere on my list and on United's loan list at the moment, Alex, there's players who are a lot more established than the ones we've been talking about. So Dean Henderson, we've chatted about in the past. Eric Bailly, we know everything about Eric Bailly, I think, to this point where we don't really need to go in more detail. And then Alex
Speaking
Tellez.
Of chaos.
Yeah, exactly.
Alex Tellez.
Yeah. Alex Tellez is also a bit chaotic as well as Eric Bailly, to be honest. I know your personal views on Alex Tellez are not that glowing.
He frustrates me.
Yeah, well, he's currently on loan at Sevilla. United paid £15 million for him in 2020. it's never really quite worked out for him. Why is that? Because his numbers in terms of goals and assists when United brought him from Porto were outstanding.
His goals and assists were inflated from things like penalties and set pieces. He's not a bad set piece taker. Once you take him off penalties, you're not really getting a lot of goals out of him from the fullback. The main thing that annoys me about him is he's too willing to cross the ball. He's very one-dimensional in that respect. Like as soon as he gets anywhere near the final third, he's trying to cross the ball no matter what. Like even if there aren't players there to cross the ball into, he just crosses it constantly. And he's a decent crosser. Like I think his delivery is actually quite good. It's almost like the decision-making aspect just needs to be more fine-tuned. And that's what annoys me about him. But look, he's 30 years old now.
Yeah.
Luke Shaw's younger than him. Malacia is younger than him. I can't see what his role will be at United. I think they should sell him. I don't think they should have bought him in the first place, to be brutally honest.
Yeah, I think his signing had a positive effect on Luke Shaw, which Tyrell Malacia's signing has also done. And Luke Shaw played his best football in that year or so after Tellez arrived. We saw like the best possible version of Shaw. We know how he responds to competition. My view was always that it shouldn't take that to drive you to play your best football. You know, motivation, I suppose, has to come from somewhere, though. So there is that. Yeah, I think Tellez, we may not see him again in the United shirt, is my view, which I think is a bit of a shame because I think that he could have offered more. He could have been more consistent because there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with his attitude and even his talent level in terms of how he can strike a ball. There aren't actually that many better in the United squad.
Yeah, he's not a bad player. His Sabre score is 77. That's not bad. It's my main issue, other than the relentless crossing, is he was the wrong sort of age of player to be bringing in. I think he was like, what, 28 at the time we brought him in, off the top of my head. That didn't really make sense. I think Malacia makes a lot more sense in terms of his age profile because he's going to be getting better whilst we have him. He's probably going to have resell if we do end up selling him. And there's more of a ceiling where he could actually like overtake Shaw even. I think when we made that Tellez signing, it should have been someone more of the age of like a Malacia rather than someone who's now 30 years old, because you get to this point where you're like, we've got our number 3 who's 30 years old, probably on like a decent contract, like he'll be on good money. It's that kind of like football decision making that sometimes at United is just missing, like that foresight. And clubs, well-run clubs, plan ahead, and that Tellez signing didn't feel like planning ahead. It felt like a bandage.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. I was working for the Manchester Evening News transfer deadline day coverage. It was a slightly put back deadline day because of COVID, and I know for a fact that United wanted to sign Sergio Reguilón as their top left back choice that window to put some pressure on Luke Shaw. They didn't get him, and then Tellez was the next one down on the list, basically, for whatever reason. I mean, probably two similar inability players, but I think Reguilón at the time was still 23. So that's a difference in itself, as signing a player who's 23, who's now just still 26, and who probably still has some improving to do. Whereas Tellez is now 30 and probably past his peak in all truth.
Yeah, I find it odd to have a list that has Reguilón at the top and then Tellez number 2. Like what are you buying the player for? I don't quite get that.
A left back, they're both left backs, Alex.
I know they're both left backs, but like in terms of, I would, if you've got a list that's all like 28, 29, 30-year-olds, you're going to put on a short contract, or young players, you're going to put on a longer contract. It seems odd to me to jump from someone who's like 22, 23 to then someone who's like on the later side of his 20s. I don't get that. And that's, yeah, it's that planning side that I think at United is sometimes lacking. And I almost felt like the Tellez deal was just done because it was available, if I'm brutally honest. It felt you said it was deadline day. I think United probably panicked a little bit, and his agent had probably been trying to move him on for like the last week or two, and they just reached out to him. And that's not what smart clubs do.
Yeah, well, the same deadline day, United signed Edinson Cavani, which I guess turned out okay, but the profile of signing that was and how last minute the deal was didn't convince me, didn't satisfy me at all. So yeah, we know all about that. We know all about United's woeful, really, record in certainly in terms of defensive recruitment over a certain period. I think from the sort of Mourinho to Solskjaer years that their defensive recruitment was quite poor. And we still have Erik Bailly out on loan, and Tellez out on loan, and Maguire and Lindelof, none of whom are first choice now under Erik Ten Hag. So it speaks to a haphazard policy of defensive recruitment. You could go into all position recruitment if you really wanted to. United are still counting the financial cost of that. If you think Phil Jones is still on the books, Axel Tuanzebe is still on the books, who's just gone out on loan. The list just goes on.
The Phil Jones fiasco is if
That's
you
another
want to
podcast.
if you want to boil down the issues at United in terms of planning, the fact that they gave Phil Jones a contract extension is it's almost a parody. It's absolutely ludicrous that they gave him a contract extension. And I think the idea behind it was that Woodward, I think Matt Judge had this, they basically copied Tottenham, thinking
Yes.
that if you give players big contracts, then you tie down an asset for a long amount of time. What they failed to consider is that there's no real point in that. The asset doesn't play, and then no one wants to buy him. All you're doing is wasting money. Like, it's such an obvious business decision. I don't understand the decision making that went into it. It's like
Their
they
eyes
had.
lit up when Kyle Walker went for 50 million to City after Spurs had put him on a long contract. I think that was what was the sort of smoking gun of that.
But there was nothing to suggest that Phil Jones would be a player that would be useful in the future. There was nothing. Like, he had a long injury record when we gave him that contract.
Yeah, yeah, and a record of
Maddening.
very inconsistent form as well. Yeah, I don't want to end on such a note. We say something positive about. I was going to say Erik Bailly. Dean Henderson, I suppose, still is a player that United could recoup some serious value for. I suppose if you think about him being out on loan and the stuff that he has done in his loans away from United. I know we spoke about him potentially not being the automatic answer to David De Gea as number one, but that's a £20 million goalkeeper at least, isn't it?
I think so. He's good enough for the Premier League. I think most clubs in the Premier League now would consider him a Premier League goalkeeper. And as a result, United should get a fair bit of money for that, which is good. My worry is that now that Keylor Navas has come in at Forest, he might actually not be the number one at Forest, which
He can't catch
really
a break,
great.
Dean Henderson, can he? That's really unfortunate. He gets injured and then he happens to be injured at the one club who will make a knee-jerk deadline day ludicrous signing out of the blue in Keylor Navas. I really didn't know what to think when I saw that.
I have no idea as to what they're paying Keylor Navas, but there's no way he's going to be number two when Henderson's back. Like, Keylor Navas is still a very, very good goalkeeper, and if I'm brutally honest, better than Dean Henderson. So I don't know what Dean Henderson's going to do for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see that one play out. See if Henderson can get a bit of luck. Really, I was going to ask you to end the podcast, Alex. Who out of our list you think is most likely to make it in the United first team? We know the answer is Ahmad to that.
Yeah.
Who's the second most likely out of the people we've talked about? Just to get the listeners thinking about a name to keep an eye out for. Is Henderson just the obvious answer, or do you rate anyone else's chances of becoming a squad player or making a little breakthrough?
Well, I guess to break that question down, you've got to look at how good are they now? How good could they be? And where are the positions where you might actually get some game time? I'd probably say it's going to be Dean Henderson, but I don't think that's very likely. And that hinges mostly on whether De Gea extends or not. I still think De Gea will extend on reduced terms. But if it does fall through, I mean, we're in February now. Dean Henderson comes back in the summer. Yeah, I could see him having a chance. I personally wouldn't have him as our number one, but if we're going to talk about that list, that is the most obvious one to play. I think
Yeah.
Alvaro Fernandez probably has the most potential of the young ones we spoke about, other than Ahmad Diallo. So I don't think he'll ever feature consistently for United, but I think he'll have a good career.
Yeah. There's Charlie Savage as well, who we didn't talk about actually, who's on loan at Forest Green. But again, he's probably in that category of will earn a decent career away from United, very much like his dad did actually after coming through the United Academy. I would say Henderson purely because there is actually a scenario where United don't have a single senior goalkeeper apart from Henderson on their books come the summer. If De Gea doesn't extend, Jack Butland is on loan and will go back. Tom Heaton is out of contract. United could lose the three goalkeepers that are currently their number 1, 2, and 3 for the rest of the season. However unlikely that is. And Henderson might be left, with a chance in pre-season, let's say, and who knows from that point onwards.
Yeah, he's not a bad goalkeeper, and I could see him having a handful of good games for United, and Ten Hag thinking, I'm going to go with him, and he has the shirt for the next season. I could see that happening. Don't want it to happen, but I could see it happening.
Yeah, Henderson and Ahmad then are the two listeners that you should be watching out for potentially next season at United. And we'll probably do these episodes periodically in the future in terms of loanees and other youngsters who are still in the United Academy, not out on loan. There's certainly a few names there for us to chat about. So I look forward to doing that in the future. Alex, thank you very much for bringing you and your vast array of jumpers onto the podcast.
You're also wearing a jumper as you say that.
Yeah,
it's cold right now.
Similarly styled jumper as well.
Manchester is cold. Okay, I have to wear jumpers.
In February. Who knew? Maybe our listeners in Thailand and Vietnam can relate. Maybe not.
Yeah. I'm jealous of them. Right now.
Well, thank you very much for appearing again, Alex, and thank you for listening to Name on the Trophy. We're also on YouTube and we are on the various social platforms, as I mentioned before, Name on the Trophy. And also you can also follow Alex's platform, Saber_sports. That's it from us too. Oh, Alex has got another point to make, probably about his TikTok.
I was going to say the TikTok. I've also been told that I need to talk about the app a little bit more. So if you go to app.sabersports.com/playerIDpro, you can try the app for 2 weeks for free.
And you too can sound as smart as Alex Wiley on football.
You can outsource your knowledge just like I do.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that lovely bit of housekeeping. And that's all then for this week's episode. We'll be back very, very soon.